Mr. Chancellor, it's now my pleasure to introduce Edward Greenspon, the Editor-in-Chief of the Globe and Mail, to deliver the Convocation address. Mr. Greenspon is the Editor-in-Chief of the Globe and Mail, as I just said, and he's been there since July 2002. You may already know of him if you're a fan of his weekly column on page 2 of the Saturday edition of the Globe. Before assuming his current position, Mr. Greenspon was a political editor of the Globe and Mail, writing a thrice-weekly column from Ottawa and co-hosting CTV's weekly current affairs program, Question Period. From 1999 to 2000, he served as executive editor of the Globe and Mail with responsibility for the Globe's news operations. During that period, he designed and implemented the editorial plan for the real-time internet news operation on globeandmail.com. Today actually marks a kind of homecoming for Mr. Greenspon. He too studied at Carleton University, earning an honors degree in journalism and political science. He went on to study at the London School of Economics as a Commonwealth Scholar, earning a master's degree in politics and government. His career at the Globe started in 1986 as a business correspondent at home and abroad. His assignments cultivated an interest in globalization and, in particular, the global ambitions of Canadian companies. He served as managing editor of Report on Business and deputy managing editor of the entire newspaper before taking up his duties as the Ottawa Chief Bureau in 1993. In Ottawa, he indulged his twin loves of politics and economics. He co-authored a best-selling book on the Chrétien government's struggles with the deficit and with the 1995 referendum. He's the winner of the 2002 Hyman Solomon Award for Excellence in Public Policy Journalism. The book, called Double Vision, The Inside Story of the Liberals in Power, was a co-winner of the 1996 Douglas Purvis Award for the best piece of policy writing in Canada. In the fall of 2001, he and pollster Darrell Bricker published Searching for Certainty Inside the New Canadian Market. I now invite Mr. Edward Greenspon to deliver the Convocation address.
Thank you very much. Chancellor Garneau, Vice Chair Jackson, Provost Hamadou Lopar, faculty members, graduates, and your proud fan clubs in the back of the room. I'm honored to be with you here today. Having missed my own graduation, I'm happy to have finally made it and to share yours with you. I couldn't help but notice that I get to speak this morning to a field house full of graduates from the arts and social sciences, as well as those who've earned degrees in Canadian studies, anthropology, cognitive science, sociology, psychology, child studies, linguistics and applied languages, and women's study. It's quite a list. Pretty well everyone is here, except somehow the journalism school from which I graduated didn't make the cut. Now, obviously I like journalists and journalism, but I recognize we're not everyone's idea of a socially acceptable group with whom to graduate. Indeed, there are those who like to say that journalists are the kinds of people who come down from the mountains after the battle is fought and shoot the wounded. And there may just be a little truth to that. The late author Norman Mailer said of the denizens of my craft that, and I quote, "If a person is not talented enough to be a novelist, not smart enough to be a lawyer, and his hands are too shaky to perform operations, he or she is likely to become a journalist." And then there was Winston Churchill, who once observed in his own particular way, "Journalists do occasionally stumble over the truth, but then they pick themselves up and carry on as if nothing had happened." But you, dear graduates of other faculties, you are unencumbered by such inherent restraints. You depart this beautiful campus today endowed with the means to create a good life for yourselves and a better world for all. It is up to you to shake off the cynics, overcome personal doubts, and manifest the courage of your convictions as you stride out onto the great stage of life. A few weeks ago, a man named Arthur Kruger died after a long fight with cancer. A past chancellor of this university, his name graces the liberal arts college within Carleton. Arthur was one of the great public servants of his generation, one of those extraordinary mentors I've been fortunate enough to find in my career. He was the son of Mennonite immigrants who came to Alberta in 1926 with nothing but a set of carpentry tools, family diaries, and a clock. He rose from the most humble beginnings on a hard-scrabble farm to great heights of independent thinking, uncompromising counsel, and critical achievement, all thanks to the transformative powers of a university education. I'm sure you'd want me to tell you that greatness in its many manifestations is within your grasp. Don't be afraid to reach for it. I'm a big believer in both the individual and societal goods that a university education delivers. Higher education is a key to personal fulfillment and success. But more than that, it provides the lubricant for social mobility and the glue for social cohesion, both indispensable building blocks for a prosperous and harmonious society. If we are to ensure that Canada's remarkable diversity serves as a national asset, it will be thanks to education. If we are to resolve the social and economic challenges of our age, it will be thanks to education. If we are to tame the tantalizing riddles of science, it will be thanks to education. You have done well to get here today. Look around, take a deep breath, and give yourself and those around you a pat on the back for what you've already accomplished. But also remember that this ceremony is just a milestone on the highway of life, a rest stop from which to look back with satisfaction and look ahead with determination. Remember that old saying, for those to whom much is given, much is required. This country, this world requires much from you. In my family, the principle of a higher education was embraced long before anyone had the opportunity to walk the talk. My grandfather and grandmother arrived with 4 of their eventual 5 children in tow and $20 in their pocket at Pier 21 in Halifax on January 25, 1929, just as the world was drifting into the Great Depression. My grandfather was denied a full formal education back in the old country, but he somehow came to know his Shakespeare and Chaucer. My mother was the only one of her siblings born in Canada and the only one to acquire a university degree. She didn't graduate until she was over 40. It was inspiring to watch her determination in bettering herself. As the oldest child in his family, my father quit school and went to work at 16 when his father died. My dad was very smart, but his failure to attend university always frustrated him and deprived him of a certain confidence. The university experience has been a critical influencer in my life. At Carleton, I learned the craft of journalism and equipped myself with the intellectual tools to cope with a complex world. I also acquired lifelong friendships and an abiding aversion to institutional food. The London School of Economics exposed me to the wider world out there and infused me with the confidence that I could run with the best. I again acquired lifelong friendships, and this time an abiding aversion to British food. So here I stand before you, the grandchild of refugees from a Russian shtetl and the editor-in-chief of Canada's national newspaper. That too is what a university experience can do for you. But universities are more than transmission lines of opportunity, important as that is. They are also the key stepping stones along any society's path of excellence. They are where our intellectual Olympians train to compete in a range of disciplines that build our shared knowledge and drive economic and human progress. I have read a number of past Convocation addresses in preparing for today, and I see that it is de rigueur to say that this generation of graduating students faces challenges greater than any ever experienced before. Well, I think it's a bit of a conceit to imagine that the challenges of our brief moment in time are the most pressing of any moment in time. The truth is that in every generation, progress is made, and in every generation, unfinished business is left behind, and new and unforeseen challenges arise. That is the mantle you take up. Canada is a nation blessed with abundant natural wealth and a most spectacular collection of people from the world over. But it has not always lived up to its potential. The recurring question for me over many years has been why, given the advantages bestowed upon us, are we not a gold medal nation? A friend told me recently about a former political science professor, a biographer of Mackenzie King, who used to tell his students that Canada had the maddening habit of, quote, dancing up to excellence and then dancing away. To me, that describes things perfectly. If you chart the span of any country like any individual, it is going to have its ups and downs. Canada enjoyed great years of economic growth and social progress in the post-war period, culminating with Expo 67. But from the early 1970s to the late 1990s, a period of about 25 years, Canada was adrift, subjecting its citizens to an unnerving series of social and economic upheavals. Canadians suffered through a long, cold winter marked by runaway deficits, rising taxes, reduced health, education, and social services, multiple national unity crises, increased workplace insecurity, and on and on. The 1980s and 1990s delivered two sharp recessions in which hardworking people lost their homes and jobs. Double-digit unemployment became accepted as the norm. People talked seriously about the IMF having to rescue our northern peso. The country almost broke apart. And yet, Canadians emerged from this long winter of discontent stronger for the experience. In the 1980s recession, they had been abandoned by big business. In the 1990s recession, they had been abandoned by tapped-out governments. Left to their own devices, they concluded that the only person who was going to take care of baby was baby herself. And so Canadians today are more resilient, more self-reliant, and more confident than ever before. And that is the Canada you inherit, a Canada that believes in itself again. We live in a world full of challenges and one also full of opportunities. It is not the worst time in history, but it is the duty of each generation to leave behind a better world for the next. Poverty persists in too many parts of the world. HIV/AIDS haunts Africa. Tyrants, while fewer and farther between than a generation ago, still ride roughshod over many countries. Education is still far from universal. Same with human rights and safe drinking water. The Middle East remains a dangerous cauldron. While we have ceased destroying the ozone layer, we are having difficulty acting in concert to address the dangers posed by greenhouse gas emissions. Here in Canada, we continue to fail to overcome the intolerable social pathologies that afflict our Aboriginal populations. Can there be anything more tragic than the juxtaposition of the acute labor shortages of the Western Canadian economies and persistently high levels of Aboriginal unemployment and despair? What a waste. We need to make sure that everyone is included and contributes in our Canada. When I left Carleton, this country was still a narrow, insular place. Many social and athletic clubs remained off-base to families like mine. Prejudice was polite but prevalent. Ours was a closed and protected little Canada. When I was a kid, the most exotic player in the National Hockey League was a centerman named Stan Mikita. He was raised in St. Catharines, but he was exotic because he'd been born in Czechoslovakia. Nobody could imagine then that the captains of the Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, Vancouver Canucks, and Ottawa Senators would all be Scandinavians, and the captain of the Calgary Flames, the son of a Nigerian immigrant, and that nobody would think twice about it. You were the best educated generation in the history of the country and more information enfranchised and connected than any before. You were open to the world within our borders and beyond. You were idealistic and self-reliant both, classic social entrepreneurs. You blend the best of the me and the we, the combination of individualism and communitarianism that makes great societies tick. The age of little Canadians sheltered behind protectionist walls and trapped within gated communities of the mind is beneath your comprehension. The modern Canadian judges his or her fellow citizens, as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed 40 years ago, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. 6 years ago, my family took its March school break holiday in Whistler. We skied from early morning to mid-afternoon and then watched the Winter Olympics on television from Salt Lake City. I remained troubled by what I considered an inexplicably high national comfort level with mediocrity. As I watched our athletes compete, I sensed I was witnessing something much bigger than a collection of individual and team competitions. I was bearing witness to an emerging impatience with mediocrity by a newly assertive class of Canadian athletes. Our curlers were but one example. They won silver and bronze, fine achievements in competing against the world's best, but they were the polar opposite of content. Interviewed afterwards, none said, well, I'm only Canadian, we're a middle power, so second or third is really awesome. No, quite the opposite. One of the female curlers summed it up best. It's hard, she said, because we didn't come here to step up onto the small podium. The small podium. That was the traditional extent of our ambition as a country. So what was wrong with her? Well, what was wrong with her was tempered by international competition. She was part of this new breed of confident, globally ambitious, resilient Canadians striving to be the best in the world. My point here is that we're in the process of creating in this land a culture in which an increasing number of Canadians carry, without even thinking about it, a new ethos of excellence. They, you, will not be content going through life without leaving footprints. I think you personify the vanguard of an emerging gold medal citizenry. Canadians want to dance up to excellence, but they don't want to dance away again. I suspect most of you feel very warmly about Canada, but you will not easily compromise your ambitions to accommodate Canada. Rather, Canada must accommodate your ambitions. Nobody of any talent in this day and age is going to stick around to be a third-rate physicist in a second-rate university. You will want to run with the best, and you are all too aware in this global village of ours what the best looks like. So it falls to us, particularly the generation now in power, to foster a Canada of excellence so that graduating classes like yours can satisfy their impulse to play at the highest levels within the physical space of this country. Too often our policymakers mistake excellence for elitism and fail to grasp that in the global economy, excellence is the foundation of prosperity, and prosperity is the foundation of social justice. You will need to remind them that you want to own the big podium. 2 years from now, in 2010, Canada will host the Winter Olympics in Vancouver. The organizers are very conscious of owning the podium, of satisfying the burning desire of a younger generation of Canadians, Olympians all, to achieve the ultimate in excellence. As you go out in the world, think of yourself as one of those Olympians. Push the boundaries, raise the bar, look out on a world of opportunities and find the places where you can make a difference. Put your education to use in making the world a better place. Leave footprints. Look around for a moment. So much intelligence, so much enthusiasm in this room. Individually, each of you can make a difference. Collectively, you can change the world. Honor your time at this university by seizing that opportunity. Dance up to excellence and refuse the temptation to dance away again. Good luck. Thank you.